It takes exactly 4 seconds to fall from the rim to the rocks. That is 4 seconds to regret the stupid joke you just made. Today, we document 6 people who treated the Grand Canyon like a playground and paid the ultimate price. These are not accidents. Do not copy these errors. Watch closely. This is how a vacation turns into a closed casket. November 28, 1992. It is the Saturday following Thanksgiving. The south rim of the Grand Canyon is teeming with life. The air is cold and thin at this altitude, carrying the scent of pine needles and ancient dust. Tourists crowd the paved walkways near the El Tovar Hotel. This is the most developed section of the park. There are polished railings, sturdy stone walls, and clear signs. It feels civilized. It feels like a theme park designed for human comfort. This is the safety betrayal. The infrastructure masks the lethal reality of the landscape. Among the crowd is 38-year-old Greg Gingrich. He is a man of high energy. He is known as the family comedian. He uses humor to connect with people. Today, he is walking with his young daughter and other relatives. They stop at a stone retaining wall to look into the abyss. The view is spectacular, but Greg is not looking at the horizon. He is looking at the ground. Below the safety wall, there is a geological feature that catches his eye. It is a terraced ledge, a flat shelf of Kaibab limestone sitting just a few feet down. It looks wide, it looks stable, it looks like a stage. A fatal idea forms in his mind. He decides to play a prank on his daughter. He wants to simulate a fall. He wants to trigger that spark of fear, then relieve it with a laugh. It is a dangerous game of emotional manipulation. Greg climbs over the wall. He stands on the precipice. The wind whips at his jacket. His family watches. They are used to his antics. They expect a show. He begins his performance. He flails his arms wildly. He mimics the panic of a man losing his footing. He shouts comically, "Help! I'm going over!" he shouts. His daughter laughs. The relatives chuckle. They understand the code. This is fake. It is just a game. But for Greg, the reaction isn't enough. He wants to sell the illusion completely. He decides to escalate the stunt. He plans to jump down to the lower ledge, crouch out of sight, and then pop back up to startle them. He calculates the distance. It is short. He calculates the landing. It looks flat. He believes he is the master of his environment. He leaps. It is a simple athletic movement. His body creates a perfect arc. In a controlled environment, like a city sidewalk, this would be harmless. But the Grand Canyon is wild. The ledge is not clean stone. It is covered in a layer of scree. These are tiny, loose fragments of eroded rock. They act exactly like ball bearings on a sheet of glass. Greg lands on the ledge. He expects friction. He expects his rubber soles to grip the limestone. Instead, he hits the rolling gravel. The physics of the situation shift instantly. His kinetic energy does not stop. It transfers into a forward slide. The friction coefficient drops to near zero. The controlled landing transforms into a fatal error. Time seems to slow down. Greg realizes his mistake. He tries to shift his weight back, but his center of gravity is already past the point of no return. The comedy routine is over. Reality rushes in. There is nothing to grab. No railing, no branch, just the smooth, cold rock. He slides off the lip of the shelf. He goes into the empty air. His family is still smiling. They are still laughing. They think this is the climax of the joke. They are waiting for him to jump back up and bow. But Greg does not jump back up. He falls 190 feet. He falls in total silence. The wind rushes past his ears. The drop takes less than 4 seconds. The human body is not engineered for this impact. He strikes the steep, rocky slope below with massive velocity. The impact causes catastrophic blunt force trauma. His body tumbles another 50 feet through the brush before coming to rest. Death is immediate. All biological functions cease instantly. Back on the rim, the scene is frozen. The laughter hangs in the air. 5 seconds pass, then 10. The silence stretches out. It becomes heavy and unnatural. The family waits for the punchline, but the canyon remains quiet. Slowly, the smile fades from the daughter's face. The realization bleeds in. This is not a joke. Panic sets in. Rangers are called. But there is no rescue to perform. This is a recovery mission. It takes hours for the technical teams to retrieve the body. The official report is dry and clinical. It lists the cause of death as an accidental fall. But the true cause was a psychological error. Greg Gingrich died because he tried to impose a human narrative onto a geological fact. He treated the edge of the world as a prop. He trusted his agility more than he respected the laws of physics. The canyon does not know you are joking. Gravity does not have a sense of humor. The echo of his daughter's laughter was the last human sound before the silence took over. June 6, 1982. The north rim of the Grand Canyon creates a different psychological effect than the south rim. It is higher in altitude, densely forested with ponderosa pines, and significantly quieter. The silence here can be disarming, lulling visitors into a state of relaxed complacency. It was in this deceptive tranquility that John Thomas Perry, a young man seeking nothing more than a moment of simple joy, made a decision that defied the instinct of self-preservation. He was hiking along the Transept Trail, a path that skirts the edge of a massive side canyon. The geology of this area is dominated by redwall limestone, a rock layer that water erosion sculptures into smooth, flowing shapes over millions of years. Near the Grand Canyon Lodge, John noticed a specific rock formation that triggered a deep childhood memory. It was a U-shaped trough, carved perfectly into the limestone by centuries of rain runoff. The water had polished the stone until it was as smooth as marble. To the human eye, this did not look like a drainage ditch for flash floods. It looked exactly like a playground slide. It was wide, inviting, and gently sloped at the top. Crucially, the bottom of the chute curved out of sight, disappearing over a rounded lip of rock. This is a visual trap known as a horizon illusion. Because he could not see the danger, his brain filled the gap with a safe assumption. He assumed the slide leveled out onto a lower terrace or a soft patch of sand. He saw a fun natural amusement park ride. He did not see the 400-foot vertical drop that waited just beyond the curve. John stepped off the safety of the trail. The sun was warm on the white limestone. The air smelled of pine resin. He approached the top of the chute and sat down. The stone felt solid and secure beneath him. He was not acting out of a desire for death. He was acting out of a desire for play. He positioned himself in the center of the groove, gripped the sides, and pushed off. The movement started slowly. The friction of his denim jeans against the rock provided a sense of control. For the first few feet, it was exactly what he wanted. A gentle, thrilling glissade. But then, the geometry of the canyon asserted its absolute authority. The slope of the chute was not constant. It was a parabola. As he descended, the angle steepened sharply. The physics of the situation shifted instantly. He crossed the point of no return. Gravity took hold of his mass and accelerated him downward. The sensation of fun evaporated in a split second, replaced by the cold shock of realization. He tried to brake. He jammed his hands and the rubber soles of his shoes against the rock, trying to create friction. But the limestone had been polished by 10,000 years of water flow. It was as slick as oiled glass. There was nothing to grab. No roots, no cracks, no rough patches to arrest his momentum. He was no longer a hiker. He was a projectile moving through a frictionless tube. The time dilation effect set in. The seconds stretched into hours. As he picked up speed, the curve of the chute finally revealed its destination. The rock did not level out. It simply ended. The chute acted as a perfect launch ramp, terminating abruptly at the edge of the sheer red wall cliff. John saw the gray stone vanish, replaced instantly by the vast, empty blue of the open canyon. There was no lower ledge to catch him. There was only the abyss of the transept. He hit the end of the slide at considerable speed. The momentum launched him clear of the rock face. He transitioned from sliding to falling in a heartbeat. He dropped into the void, suspended in the air for a terrifyingly long interval. The silence of the North Rim swallowed him. He fell approximately 150 feet before his trajectory intersected with the talus slope at the base of the cliff. The impact was violent and final. The laws of biology cannot compete with the laws of physics at that velocity. The deceleration caused massive, fatal structural trauma, instantly terminating all life functions. There was no suffering, only the sudden, brutal stop. Back on the rim, the silence returns instantly, swallowing the event whole. The wind continued to blow through the trees. The slide remained there, gleaming in the sunlight, unchanged by the tragedy it had just facilitated. John Perry died because he projected human logic onto a geological structure. He looked at a drainage channel and saw a toy. He trusted the smooth surface, forgetting that in the canyon, smoothness is often a sign of danger, a warning that water and gravity flows there with lethal speed. The chute remains a silent testament to the danger of misinterpreting the landscape, waiting for the next person to mistake the indifference of nature for an invitation to play. It is a stark reminder that the canyon is not a theme park, and it does not adhere to human safety standards. July 15th, 1985. It is the peak of the summer monsoon season at the Grand Canyon. During these volatile weeks, the afternoon sky transforms from a scenic backdrop into a violent atmospheric battlefield. Massive thunderheads, fueled by the searing heat of the desert floor, rise 40,000 feet into the air, turning black and heavy with moisture. These are not gentle rain clouds. They are floating batteries, storing gigajoules of electrical energy that are desperate to discharge into the ground. On this particular afternoon, a severe thunderstorm is rolling directly over the South Rim. The target zone is Mather Point, a jagged finger of rock that juts out into the void, offering the most spectacular views, but also the most dangerous exposure. As the sky darkens and the deep rumble of thunder begins to shake the limestone beneath their feet, the smart tourists retreat. They understand the primal warning signals of nature. They run to their cars, which act as metal cages, safely directing electricity around the occupants and into the tires. But Harry P., a visitor entranced by the raw, cinematic power of the storm, makes a different choice. He decides to stay. He views the storm through a lens of modern detachment, treating it like a movie on a screen rather than a physical threat hanging directly above his head. As the rain begins to fall, heavy and cold, Harry acts on a simple domestic impulse. He wants to stay dry while he watches the show. He reaches into his gear and pulls out an object that will seal his fate. It is a standard, large umbrella. Crucially, it is constructed with a central metal shaft and a pointed metal tip. In the context of a city street, this object is a harmless shield against water. In the context of an electrical storm on an exposed cliff, it is a lightning rod. Harry opens the umbrella and hoists it high above his head. By doing this, he fundamentally changes his relationship with the storm. He is no longer just a man standing on a rock. He has artificially extended his height and created a conductive path of least resistance. The physics of lightning are precise, mechanical, and unforgiving. Inside the cloud, negative charges pool at the bottom. On the ground, positive charges pool on the high points, tracking the storm like a shadow. These positive charges are desperate to connect with the cloud. They climb up trees, rocks, and towers. On Mather Point, the positive charge finds Harry. It climbs up his body, surges up his arm, travels up the metal shaft of the umbrella, and concentrates at the metal tip. The air around him likely begins to buzz with static electricity. His hair stands on end, a final biological warning from his nervous system that he ignores or misinterprets as excitement. High above, a step leader, a jagged finger of ionized air, descends from the cloud. It is moving in steps, searching blindly for the easiest connection to the earth. As it nears the ground, it draws an upward streamer from the most conductive point in the vicinity. Harry's umbrella, held high in the air, wins the competition against the surrounding rocks. It offers the lightning a perfect metallic shortcut. The connection is made. The circuit closes. In a microsecond, a return stroke of approximately 300 million volts surges through the channel. The air inside the bolt is instantly heated to 50,000 degrees Fahrenheit, 5 times hotter than the surface of the sun. This rapid heating causes the air to explode outward, creating the deafening shock wave we hear as thunder. But for Harry, there is no sound yet. The electricity moves faster than the speed of sound. The bolt strikes the tip of the umbrella. The current does not stop there. It travels down the metal shaft, directly into Harry's hand, and surges through his torso to reach the ground. The human body is essentially a bag of salt water, an excellent conductor of electricity. The massive jolt overrides the delicate electrical impulses that regulate the heart. He suffers immediate cardiac standstill. The current exits through his feet where the energy grounds into the rock. It is a violent, instantaneous event. One moment, he is standing dry under his canopy, thinking he has outsmarted the rain. The next, he is lifeless on the limestone. The umbrella is likely blown apart or fused by the heat. When the rescue teams arrive, there is nothing to be done. The medical report is clinical. Death by electrocution caused by a lightning strike. But the narrative cause was a failure to understand the environment. Harry tried to use a tool of civilization to defeat a force of nature. He worried about the minor inconvenience of getting wet, while ignoring the catastrophic danger of becoming part of an electrical circuit. He turned himself into the highest point on the rim, inviting the sky to touch him. It is a stark lesson in the hierarchy of nature. When the atmosphere charges up, the only safe place is low, and the only safe object is nothing. Harry's final act was to raise a metal flag to the heavens, and the heavens answered with absolute, fatal precision. The mid-1960s at the Grand Canyon was a time of unchecked exploration. It was an era before modern safety protocols were fully written. The canyon was seen by many as a rugged playground rather than a hostile wilderness. Into this environment stepped Edward G. He was a man driven by intense curiosity. He was physically fit and ambitious, but he lacked one critical asset: technical knowledge. His goal was specific. He wanted to reach a small, inaccessible cave located partway down a vertical cliff face. To reach it, he needed a rope. A modern climber would visit a specialized outfitter. They would buy a dynamic rope designed with a protective sheath and a core engineered to absorb energy. Edward did not do this. He went to a local general store. He walked down the aisle of household goods. He selected a coil of generic nylon cord. It was the kind of rope intended for tying down tarps or hanging wet laundry in the sun. To Edward, it looked strong. He likely tested it by pulling on it. It held his weight. He made a fatal calculation. He assumed that tensile strength was the same as durability. He believed that if the rope could hold him in a garage, it could hold him on a cliff. He was wrong. He drove to the rim. He hiked to the edge of the precipice. He found a sturdy anchor point, likely a heavy boulder or a juniper tree. He tied his knot. He looked over the edge. The drop was significant, but the cave was tantalizingly close. He trusted the white nylon line coiled at his feet. He wrapped the rope around his body for friction and backed over the edge. The geology of the Grand Canyon is not smooth concrete. The upper layer is Kaibab limestone. It is a fossilized seabed. Under a microscope, the surface of this rock looks like a landscape of jagged knives and broken glass. As Edward lowered himself, the rope grew taut. It took his full body weight. At the lip of the cliff, the rope bent 90 degrees to go down the wall. This was the kill point. As Edward moved, the rope sawed back and forth across the sharp edge of the limestone. In the world of physics, Friction is not just resistance. Friction is heat. Standard climbing ropes are designed to resist this, but cheap consumer nylon has a critical weakness. It has a very low melting point. As the rope rubbed against the rock, the friction did not just cut the fibers, it cooked them. The nylon began to undergo a phase change. It transitioned from a solid polymer into a semi-liquid state. The white fibers didn't just snap, they began to smear. Edward was suspended in the air. He was focused on his footing. He was focused on the cave below. He was completely unaware of the chemical reaction happening 2 feet above his head. The smell of hot plastic might have been whisked away by the wind. The integrity of the rope degraded exponentially. The heat rose above 400 degrees Fahrenheit at the contact point. The outer strands melted. They fused together and lost all structural tension. Then the inner core was exposed to the razor edge of the rock. The failure was likely silent. There was no dramatic fraying sound. There was just a sudden release of tension. The plasticized material sheared completely. Edward was instantly disconnected from the world above. Gravity reclaimed him. He fell backward into the void. The drop was deep enough that acceleration was absolute. He struck the terrain below with terminal velocity. The impact caused massive, non-survivable trauma to the skeletal system. Life ceased upon contact. When investigators later examined the scene, the story of the accident was written clearly on the anchor. The remaining piece of rope was not frayed or ragged. It was fused. It was blackened and hard at the tip. It looked like the end of a candle that had been extinguished. The rock had acted as a dull, heated knife. It had slowly sawed through the material until it failed. Edward G. died because he treated a technical problem with a hardware store solution. He did not understand that in the vertical world, a rope is not just a string. It is a life support machine that must handle heat, friction, and stress. By using a clothesline to support a human life, he turned a geological exploration into a fatal experiment in material science. He proved that nature's sharpest edges will always defeat humanity's cheapest materials. The cave remains there today, unvisited by him, a silent witness to the difference between being brave and being prepared. July 8, 2004. It is the peak of summer. The Grand Canyon is not just a landscape, it is a solar oven. On the rim, the air is breathable, but deep inside the gorge, the environment is hostile to human life. The rocks absorb the sun's radiation all day and radiate it back out, creating a heat trap where temperatures can exceed 120 degrees Fahrenheit. Into this furnace steps 24-year-old Margaret Bradley. She is not a novice. She is a medical student at the University of Chicago. She is also an elite marathon runner. Her body is a finely tuned machine. Her resting heart rate is low. Her muscles are efficient. She believes she is invincible. She plans a massive endurance run. She intends to cover 27 miles in a single day. She wants to run down the Grandview Trail to the river and back out. It is a feat that requires superhuman stamina. But Margaret makes a calculation error that no amount of fitness can fix. She underestimates the physics of the canyon. She packs light to move fast. She carries only 2 small bottles of water. That is roughly 1.5 liters. For a run of this duration in this heat, she needs at least 4 times that amount. She also leaves her map behind. She trusts her instincts. She trusts her legs. She begins her descent in the morning cool. Gravity pulls her down easily. She moves fast. She feels strong. But as she drops in elevation, the temperature rises. It is an invisible gradient. For every 1,000 feet she descends, the air gets hotter. By the time she reaches the tonneau platform, she is running in a kill zone. She misses a critical turn. She is now off route. She is miles from the river. She is miles from help. And her water bottles are empty. The biological clock starts ticking. The human body is a water-cooled engine. It relies on sweat to keep the core temperature stable. When the water runs out, the cooling system fails. Margaret keeps running. She is an athlete. She is trained to push through pain. She enters the red zone of exertion. But without water, her blood chemistry changes. It loses volume. It becomes thicker. It turns into sludge. Her heart has to work twice as hard to pump this viscous fluid through her veins. This is the onset of severe dehydration. A normal person might have stopped hours ago. A normal person might have collapsed in the shade while they still had reserves. But Margaret is too strong for her own good. Her endurance allows her to push her body past the point of no return. She forces her muscles to keep firing. This generates more internal heat. Her core temperature spikes above 104 degrees. This is hyperthermia. The proteins in her cells begin to break down. It is a chemical unraveling. Her brain begins to suffer critical thermal failure. Delirium sets in. The medical student who knows the symptoms of heat stroke is now too confused to recognize them in herself. Hallucinations replace reality. She may feel cold chills, a paradox of the nervous system failing. She tries to climb out. She fights gravity. But the canyon walls are steep. The sun is relentless. Her kidneys shut down to save fluid. Her digestive system stops. Her body is consuming its own reserves to keep the heart beating. Finally, the thermodynamic limit is reached. The engine seizes. She collapses on the trail. She is alone. The silence of the canyon is absolute. When search and rescue teams find her, it is too late. The medical report paints a grim picture. Her body is physically perfect, but chemically destroyed. There is no water left in her tissues. Margaret Bradley did not die because she was weak. She died because she was too strong. Her fitness was a trap. It allowed her to go deeper into the danger zone than anyone else could have. She tried to negotiate with the laws of thermodynamics, but physics does not make deals. She ran a race against the sun, and the sun won. Her death remains a brutal lesson for every athlete who visits the park. Biology has hard limits, and in the Grand Canyon, confidence is not a survival tool. Water is. The year is 1958. The Colorado River flows at the bottom of the Grand Canyon with a power that is impossible to see from the rim. From a mile up, it looks like a quiet, brown ribbon. But at water level, it is a roaring industrial machine. It moves thousands of cubic feet of water every second. It carries millions of tons of sediment. It acts like a hydraulic grinder that has carved through 2 billion years of stone. The water is opaque. It is turbulent, and it is lethally cold. The temperature rarely rises above 50 degrees Fahrenheit. Into this hostile environment steps Robert Spellellar. He is a man of the 1950s. It is an era of mechanical optimism. He looks at the river and sees a challenge he can solve with his hands. He ignores the warnings of park rangers. He ignores the history of explorers who vanished in these waters. He decides to navigate the river on his own terms. He does not buy a boat. He builds one. His vessel is a creation of amateur engineering. It is constructed from 4 heavy-duty inner tubes salvaged from truck tires. He lashes them together with standard rope and wooden planks. In his mind, this is a brilliant solution. He tests the raft in calm water. It floats. It holds his weight. This is the static illusion. In a quiet pool, buoyancy is simple, but the Colorado River is dynamic. It applies forces in every direction at once. It pulls, twists, and shears. Robert pushes off from the shore. He drifts into the current. For the first few miles, the raft performs well. He feels the thrill of adventure. He believes he has outsmarted the experts. He trusts the air inside the rubber. He trusts the knots he tied himself. But the river is patient. It waits for the gradient to steepen. Robert approaches a section of rapids. The sound of the water changes. It turns into a deafening roar. The surface transforms into a chaotic field of white water. A single wave in the Colorado can weigh as much as a small car. When Robert's raft hits the first major rapid, the laws of hydrodynamics declare war on his construction. The raft is not a rigid hull. It is a collection of soft, flexible parts. The water grabs the front tubes and twists them left. The current grabs the back tubes and twists them right. The ropes are subjected to thousands of pounds of tension in a split second. They are not climbing ropes. They are utility cords. They cannot absorb the energy. The raft does not just tip over. It structurally disintegrates. The knots slip. The wood snaps. The tubes are torn apart by the violence of the flow. Robert is instantly converted from a captain to a victim. He is dumped into the churning water. This is where the second fatal factor activates: the temperature. The water is 48 degrees. When a human body hits water this cold, it triggers the cold shock response. It is an involuntary reflex. Robert does not hold his breath. He gasps. It is an uncontrollable, violent inhalation. Because his head is submerged in turbulence, he does not inhale air. He inhales a mixture of freezing water and silt. His vocal cords spasm. They seal his airway. This is the beginning of the end. But even if he manages to cough it out, the clock is ticking. The cold water sucks the heat out of his body 25 times faster than air. His skin temperature drops instantly. His body reacts by constricting all blood vessels in his arms and legs. It shunts warm blood to the core to protect the heart. This is a survival mechanism, but in a rapid, it is a death sentence. It causes swim failure. Within minutes, the nerves and muscles in his limbs stop working. He loses the ability to coordinate his movements. He cannot swim to shore. He cannot grab a floating inner tube. He becomes a passenger in the current. His life jacket is primitive and wholly insufficient for this level of turbulence. He is battered against rocks hidden beneath the muddy surface. The river is indifferent. It processes him like it processes driftwood. He is pulled down by an eddy line. He is trapped in a hydraulic hole, a recirculating current that holds objects underwater. The end is clinical and quiet compared to the roar of the water. Oxygen deprivation leads to unconsciousness. The heart, stressed by the cold, stops beating. Robert Spellellar died because he brought a toy to a war zone. He believed that buoyancy was the only requirement for a boat. He failed to understand that the Colorado River is not just water. It is a force of geological erosion. His raft was destroyed not by bad luck, but by the inevitable math of force versus material strength. The rubber tubes were found later. They were bobbing innocently in the eddies downstream. They were a silent testament to the difference between floating and surviving. The canyon does not forgive amateur engineering. It disassembles it. The man who pranked his family bought a moment of laughter with his life. Let's play a game. If I offered you $10 million to stand on that same slippery ledge without a rope for just 10 seconds, would you take the money? Don't lie. Most of you would risk it. Write yes or no below and prove me wrong. Subscribe for more tests of your survival instinct.